Okay, welcome to the first video for Essentials of Anatomy and Physiology. We are here at the Cornell University Library. The reason that we are at the Cornell University Library is one of our authors, Frederick H. Martini, who authored this textbook. He received his PhD from Cornell University. He's a member of the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society. He has a special expertise in physiology, histology, and embryology, and obviously anatomy. Now, this Frederick H. Martini guy used a picture. I think he accidentally submitted Joe Pesci's picture in there with his kid on a ski trip or something because it really does look like Joe Pesci over here. So then we got Edwin Bartholomew. He's the other author. He got his degree from Bowling Green State University in Ohio. And he also is doing some teaching and stuff in Maui. Then we got Kathleen Welch. She was a clinical consultant, University of Washington in Seattle. We got Dr. William C. Ober, who he's the art coordinator and illustrator, and he does all the illustrations which make this book unique. And Claire Garrison is a registered nurse and an illustrator as well. So you got the illustration team, you got the text team, and this book is highly built on the flow between narrative, the text narrative, and the information, right? And between the illustrations, which flesh it out so you can have a visual with it, see how everything links together. So their big thing is about weaving these things together. Now this book is copyright 1997. It's a second edition, and it's been copyrighted again in 2000. And so that was the last copyright as far as I have this text in my hand. I like my textbooks to be a little bit older because obviously, as you can tell, they keep making everything a bit worse. So I'd like ideally an older textbook to see where people were at before they corrupted everything, but we'll have to work with the 90s for now. There's going to be a lot of truth in here, a lot of good stuff. I took some notes to break down the first two prefaces of this book, which, yes, has two prefaces. There's one to the instructor and there's one to the student. So we are going to start off here with the preface to the instructor and my notes on that. So they break it down into these subcategories. And the first category on the preface to the instructor is that the world is changing. And so they're telling us that there's expanding knowledge, tech, and communication techniques, which have expanded anatomical and physiological understanding. Okay, well, what is anatomy and physiology, first of all? So physiology is the branch of biology, so life studies, with the functions and vital processes of living organisms or their parts and organs. So the functions, so it deals with the functions, not just the structure of it, which is what anatomy does, right? Anatomy is the structure of an organism or a body or a model of it when it's dissected. So physiology is the function of that structure. So the living organism or its parts or its organs. So the organ, how the organ functions as a cell, how the cell functions, how the organ functions, how the organ system functions, how the body as a whole functions. So combating disease, reducing suffering, and promoting good health. And, you know, it's like we look at the medical industry today, right? And people are sicker than ever. They're all overweight. Our food is garbage. Our lifestyles are trash. Doctors are pumping us full of meds, right? Like that's no secret. And I don't think it's because people who want to be doctors are the problem. I think it's because the medical industry is set up, you know, to make people sick, to control other people, and profits are secondary, right? So learning about anatomy is important, especially for me as an astrologer, because, you know, astrology is based off of the human body. Aries rules the head, Taurus rules the throat, Gemini rules the hands, the shoulders, the arms, like you got all these different things. Leo rules the heart, Cancer rules the digestive system and the stomach, right? Or rather, the stomach. Virgo rules the intestines. So, as we can see, each astrological sign is directly linked up with anatomy. So, that's where I learned a lot of my anatomy from. But it's time for a more in depth approach. So, demographics and aging have created a need for this knowledge and skill. That's for sure. We need to understand the body and we need to understand how it functions. Like this, I don't understand how people in school aren't teaching people right away about their bodies. Like this should be like day one, you go in there and like they should be teaching you this. The owner's manual to the most important thing you have, which is your physical organism, right? The physical vessel which your spirit's incarnated in, right? And they don't tell you this. They don't tell you how it operates, what it does, what it needs, what the signs are. Like if your skin's dry, what does that mean? If your skin's too moist, what does that mean? If your skin's too oily, what does that like? What are these signs of? If like what can we do about it when we figure it out? How come that's not being taught? So yeah, it's important to know this stuff. To be valuable to the workforce, you have to be able to absorb new information, use new technology, and solve problems. That's for sure, right? But is this new technology actually good technology? Obviously, quite a lot of it is effective in its own right, but is it actually what we're told it is, right? And the book is about becoming a better lifelong learner, and that I can get behind, you know? So there's been many changes to resources available to help teach this subject. The authors say that using animation simulations enable us to communicate abstract concepts more effectively. So that's true. I obviously have to put in there or to lie, right? Like you can use an animation to, you know, create, planets that we've never been to digitally, that you've never photographed for real, and then have people believing that we're swirling around in this thing, right? So you can dock anything up. You can make cells look like something else. You can make organs look like or behave in ways they don't actually behave to throw us off track. So we have to trust now what we read, and we have to find out, we have to dig through the truths. Is there half truths? Is there whole truths? Is this, knowledge completely intact, or what will we extract? And I'm sure we'll have to do some extraction. But the thing is, you can only hide so much, right? Like we can see our bodies, we can see our hair, our nails, our skin, our eyes. Like, so you can't really hide the fact that these things are from us. We can look at things through a microscope, right? And see a cell or this or that or whatever. So what's going to happen is that like we can test the knowledge that we find either through observation, experimentation, things like that. So these authors visited instructors in New Zealand, Australia, North America to listen to their concerns, problems, and successes. And by doing so, the authors have tried to create an organized suite of tools that let them maximize instructors' impact in the classroom, time available, or for us in our study time, I'd assume. So yeah, like helping us save more time while studying, which is great. And I'm glad that they did that, right? I'm interested to know how their system works, how much they're able to help us, dig through this stuff. So the next subheading of the preface to the instructor is simplify. So this is the focus of this textbook, is to simplify the processes of teaching and learning anatomy and physiology. So this is my breakdown now. This is my condensed version of everything that they were saying. So as they say, they can't give us more time, but they can help us make better use of the time that we have. So by placing info in a meaningful context and helping us develop problem-solving skills. So they do this by using the system presented in the preface to the student outline, which we'll go over after I go over the preface to the instructor. Using this system helps us to simplify our studies. So consistent art style and integration of text and art closely and consistent terminology throughout. So there's consistency. They use the same illustrators and the same art team. There are additional ways they simplify the teaching and learning process, working with William Ober, who I mentioned already, award-winning medical illustrator. He and his associate, Claire Garrison, who I also mentioned, handle all the art, ensuring structures and processes are depicted in a consistent manner throughout this whole book. So we want to know what the organ systems are. We want to know what the functions are, right? Physiologically, and they're going to make sure that we have all the illustrations we need. This text is the only essentials book with an art program created and managed by a medical illustrator. It's pretty crazy. That's the only one as of 1997 or 2000. Every instructor and student is unique, supplementing differently, meaning what was our supplements to learning? We learn audially, traditional study guides. So just going over like maybe index cards, the notes, CD-ROM technology, video tutors, so visual, and the internet. And then they're saying that this book integrates and coordinates all the supplemental learning into one unified system, which is going to be cool. While accommodating unique teaching and learning styles, tech, and budgets. So basically, if I don't have microscopes and access to the highest tech, they're accommodating me by giving me the best illustrations, by giving me the CD, by giving me all this cool stuff. Which I forgot to mention that in the beginning of this book is roots, prefixes, suffixes, and combining forms. So all these foreign word roots, prefixes, and suffixes, right? Combining forms, they got a whole list of them. So like scope, to view, sect, to cut, semi, half. So semicircle, half circle. So they're breaking it down. Septic, putrid. So antiseptic, anti-putrid. So very cool feature that they put in there. I wish other books would do that same thing because, but I think like my biochem book rather is breaking it down where they're giving you the vocab terms at the beginning of the chapter. So then we go into our next subheading of the text. So what's different about the second edition? So right, we're on the second edition, we're not on the first anymore. So there's integrated review of feedback. So they went around identifying key areas where students are having trouble following the narrative or grasping concepts. And then the illustrators revised the art program. They revised the narrative. So they saw what people had problems and they made revisions to correct those problems, right? Enhanced and revised text discussions, key physiological topics, including muscular, renal, neural, endocrine, cardiovascular, and reproductive physiologies. So all those physiologies, the functions of renal, neural, endocrine, cardiovascular, reproductive, and muscular. How cool is that? So enhanced and revised illustration program, more than 300 new or revised illustrations. So that could be a good or bad thing, right? Either the first book had, a lot of truth bombs and they were like, whoa, don't want everybody having all this information, like revise that shit. Or they really did, do the right thing and revise it so that we could learn more, which you always hope it's the latter, right? Updated statistics and narrative on important clinical applications. So, yeah, I mean, that's always a good thing. So the clinical applications are going to be cool because they're going to tell us how this works in a clinical setting. Now, because we see that the medical system is clearly broken, like people aren't getting healthy, they're not healing, there's just treatment. There's not health, healing, wholeness. We're not focused on lifestyle changes and getting people to a stronger state of being. We're focused on managing a degrading condition with the medical, getting you to your baseline meds and then increasing the meds as your condition gets worse, but like trying to keep it so that, you don't experience so much pain, which obviously isn't effective. Nobody I know who's on all these meds is getting any healthier. They're either staying the same, but really that means They're just declining, but slowly in a managed way. And it's like, why aren't we managing a strength program? Why aren't we managing that? And it's like, well, you can say, well, that's the job of a physical trainer, and that's the job of this. Like, well, that should be the job of the people who supposedly care for your body. So there's integrated supplements, meaning supplements to learning in this book. And there's some for instructors, there's some for students. So they go over that. So there's multimedia presentation manager. There's a 300 full color transparency acetates. Now these are for instructors. So 300 images, right? Acetate images. Instructors resource guide, teaching tips and suggestions. So then there's the test item file and Prentice Hall custom test software. That's a mouthful. That's 3,000 plus questions for you to like quiz yourself, things like that. Prentice Hall Laserdisc for anatomy and physiology and barcode manual. So this is just meaning high quality animations about anatomy and physiology. Then there's WebCT. So this facilitates web-based online courses, provides shell for the course and preloaded courses, and minimizes the need to develop content. So it provides the structure for the course, and this way you don't have to sit there going, what am I going to do to develop test questions and this and that? They're saying we've got it all here for the instructors, so you don't have to stress out about it. That's WebCT. So then for students, there's the companion website for essentials of anatomy and physiology. So there's the quiz questions, there's self-grading, exercise, there's the gateway to other websites. So this is pretty cool, right? I'll take you to other websites that are there, let you test yourself, which is what you want to do, right? You want to see where we're at. How am I doing? Am I grasping the information? Am I getting what they're saying? Anatomy and physiology video tour, 75-minute video focused on most challenging concepts. So I thought that might be cool because already you can probably prepare yourself for what might be the most difficult things and get it already starting to ruminate in your brain. And then there's the FAP, F-A-P, Interactive CD-ROM. This is a supplementary electronic reference and aids to visualize difficult concepts, exercises to demonstrate understanding. It includes cases that let students practice their analytical and diagnostic skills in real-world situations. So there's the interactive CD-ROM that's allowing us to test our knowledge in real-world clinical situations and see if we're right. So then there's the applications manual. There's more detailed clinical info, critical thinking questions for each buddy system. So already we have quiz questions, we have websites, we have electronic references, we got visual aids, we got study guides, exercises, questions, etc. to master topics and concepts. And then we got the always reliable New York Times themes of the Times program, current relevant info. I mean, take that propaganda for what you will. So these textbooks have two components, right? There's the narrative and the visual, which I already touched upon earlier. And the last thing I'm going to go over in this video is the preface to the student. So this way we know, how we're supposed to be learning from this book. That's what this preface to the student's about. That's the system that in the instructor portion they talk about using. So we got to know a couple of definitions. Again, that's histology, right? The branch of biology concerned with the microscopic study of the structure of tissues. The tissue structure of an organism. So microscopic study of the structure of tissues. So cells form into tissues. So the tissue structure. And so they're using a microscope to study this. And then you have embryology, which is the branch of biology dealing with the formation and development of the embryo. So Frederick Martini, he is like an expert in this stuff, right? The embryo is a human organism up to the 3rd month after conception. The textbook has two primary goals. Now, this is important. How to simplify our life. We need to get the most out of this book. And we have to know what the goals of the book are in order to do that. One is to build a foundation of essential knowledge. So what structure is it? How does that structure work? That's the physiological aspect. And what happens when it doesn't work? That's the clinical aspect, right? So what is the structure? Anatomy. How does that structure work? Physiology. What happens when it doesn't work? Clinical. Testing our knowledge in real-world situations. Such a foundation will support further courses dealing with specific topics in human anatomy or physiology. Exactly. If we know what the structures are, if we know how they work, If we know what happens when they don't work, then we're pretty well equipped to, continue our anatomical studies more in depth, right? Now, the second primary goal is to provide a framework for interpreting and applying related information obtained outside the classroom. So what they're saying is we need to build the outer borders of the puzzle so that as you get pieces, you can fit them in. You know where to try to test them out. You know where to try to piece it together. If we have the border, the framework already done, you're good. That's what this course is helping us do. So the framework should make it possible for us to utilize what we learn in this course in analyzing everyday problems and situations. So again, we're at home, we got something going on anatomically. We're trying to figure out maybe how to grow our body, maybe how to work it out better, maybe why we're not gaining muscle, this or that. Like now we can probably work out this problem because we have the framework to do so. So mastering skills needed to succeed in this course helps us succeed in the workplace, which obviously, right? Or just if you're like me and, it's going to help me succeed by being a better astrologer, by, knowing more information, by, enhancing my understanding when it comes to creating herbs and selling that and stuff. So we must learn how to learn, organize new information, connect it to what we already know, apply it as needed. So this is how to learn. We have to organize new information. We have to connect it to what we already know, and we have to apply it as needed. So we can't just get single isolated concepts. We can't just have these things compartmentalized. We have to, connect the dots as we go. And then we have to be able to apply what we've learned to real life situations. So we want to make better use of our time by learning to recognize anatomy and physiology patterns that repeat. This is perfect. Pattern recognition. Anything that helps with pattern recognition, that makes you so much more intelligent because you just start to notice patterns. You start to see, how everything is laid out, organized. So by learning how to use the book properly, getting the most out of our time. So number one is emphasizing concepts. So the very first thing we need to do with our user's guide as students is we need to emphasize concepts, which includes chapter outline and objectives. So what does this do? It helps us structure our reading and keep our attention on key concepts. And it gives us vocabulary aids now. So we're emphasizing concepts, vocabulary, words are describing these concepts. So we need to develop our vocabulary. They list important word roots, key terms highlighted in bold type, and concept links. So there's a chain link icon in this book. If you buy it and you're reading it with me, it indicates new materials being covered related to the earlier discussion. So that's cool. You get to a point, it shows you a little link, and then it tells you what page number previously had the link to that concept. So this is great. We're developing our vocabulary, figuring out what the key terms of anatomy and physiology are. And we're structuring our reading to stay focused on these key concepts. They're giving us the proper objectives. They're laying it out before we even get into the chapter. The next thing we're doing as students is we're visualizing structure and function. So first we're emphasizing concepts, ideas, right? We're visualizing structure and function. Because anatomy, structure, physiology, function. So outstanding anatomy, art, and photos aid to visualizing structures with macro and micro drawings and coupled with histology or electron micrographs. So histology, right? Using microscopes to study tissues, or electron micrographs. So we're getting pictures of this stuff. Now we have figure reference locators, right? The figures are going to be these pictures and stuff. Red dots act as placeholders, helping us return to our spot in the narrative, which is easy because if you're reading this book now, you can just easily look at the figure and then go back to the text where you were. Conceptual diagrams show physiology, flowcharts that link structure and function. This is so important, right? This is the whole point of the book. Conceptual diagrams show physiology. So the function, the flowcharts in the book are going to link the structure, the anatomical structure, to the function of that structure and its function within a larger organ system. And that's where we come to our next heading, which is integrating the concepts. So now we visualize the structure and the function. Now we're going to integrate the concepts. They give us system integrators to do that. This shows how one system interacts with the other system. Then it gives us focus boxes. Now, the focus boxes are illustrated summaries of important processes or clinical conditions. So we have these clinical conditions that we can go over and go, oh, this is what happens if the eye is not working right or properly or this or that. Concept check questions. So these are helping us assess our understanding of basic concepts, answers at the end of the chapter. So in the meantime, we can test our knowledge and say, did we grasp this? Do I have the questions right? And the questions themselves can help focus our mind. If we go and read the questions first, then go back and read the chapter, we know what we're looking for. The next thing is we're relating clinical examples. This is the second to last part of our user's guide. Clinical notes, essays covering major diseases and clinical procedures. And then we have clinical discussion. So important clinical topic shows how an understanding of abnormal conditions sheds light on normal functions and vice versa. So we want to see what the abnormal state is so that we can, put that as contrast to what it is in the normal state and begin to understand here's how it looks normally, here's how it looks when it's not normal, and vice versa. And we're starting to understand how this function can be interrupted, what happens when it does, right? That was part of the primary goals. What is it? How does it work? What happens when it doesn't work? Clinical. So we're going to review the concepts, the key terms. That's our last section, reviewing the concepts. So what are the key terms? Important terms are listed with a page reference for quick review. And then there's a summary outline, provides a detailed summary of all sections in the chapter. So then there's review questions. Questions are organized in a 3-tier system. So this helps us build our knowledge. Level 1 of this tier is we test our recall of chapters, basic information and terms. So key terms, basic concepts, right? Then level 2, we check our grasp of concepts and ability to integrate ideas presented in different parts of the chapter. And then level 3, we develop our powers of reasoning and analysis by applying chapter material to the real world clinical situations. So level 1, 2, and 3 are hitting on all the primary goals, right? What is it? We test our recall of the basic info and terms. How does it work? We check our concepts of integrating ideas presented in the parts of the chapter. So integration, physiology, how's it function? And then level 3, can we reason that out now that we know? How does it happen when it doesn't work? And then answers. Concept check questions are answered at the end of the chapter. So that's good. Now we can test our knowledge. We can see what we got. So we got all of this together. The student one's pretty important. So we went over our 2 primary goals, right? Building a framework so we can add new information in later, which was the second one. And what structure is it? How does it work? And what happens when it doesn't work, right? Anatomy, physiology, clinical, real world situations. To become better learners, we're emphasizing concepts, we're visualizing structure and function, we're integrating those concepts, we're relating them to clinical examples, and we're reviewing those concepts later to test our knowledge. That's pretty simple, straightforward. See what happens when you take a few minutes to break down the book? Yeah, nobody wants to sit there and read the preface. Yeah, we all just want to get into chapter 1. But now I personally feel, especially now having gone over it with you, I have a better grasp on how we're supposed to be looking at approaching this text and getting the most out of it. So it seems like they did a pretty good job on this overall, trying to give us a better flow and system to learning. And there's going to be a lot of good information in here because, like I said, you can't hide the body, you can't hide the functions. I mean, you wouldn't be able to actually be effective in the workplace. Now, they may limit my thing and say I have to use poor methods like give you meds instead of a lifestyle change, that I can't mention nutrition. Like that's a whole nother thing entirely, but we aren't bound by that BS. We can read this book together. We can figure out what's going on, and we can start to apply this anatomy to other things, like for me, astrology, herbology, all these different things, biochemistry. And, all of these things are going to relate together for me personally in things that I'm studying. Electricity and magnetism. And so, and even history, right? Like just helping us understand the body, helping us understand history. So, yeah, that's where we're at now. I think that's a good place to start. And then we're going to go over chapter 1 pretty soon whenever I finish that. So stay tuned. Thanks for hanging with me, and I'll see you next time.